Verses 1 to 2. The Pharisees and teachers of the law ask Jesus why his disciples don't follow the tradition of the elders, specifically regarding hand-washing before eating. Explanation. This question relates to the Jewish oral tradition that had developed over time, where rituals and customs were considered just as important as God's commandments. Jesus is about to show that following traditions blindly, without adhering to God's commandments, misses the point. Verses 3 to 9, Jesus responds by quoting Isaiah, pointing out that people can honor God with their lips, but their hearts are far from Him. He accuses them of nullifying God's command for the sake of their traditions. Explanation. Jesus exposes the hypocrisy of the religious leaders, highlighting how their traditions can sometimes contradict God's commands. For example, they allowed people to bypass supporting their parents by dedicating money to God called Korban, a tradition that went against the command to honor one's father and mother. Jesus critiques such traditions that manipulate the law for personal convenience. Verses 10 to 11, Jesus calls the crowd to him and explains that it's not what goes into the mouth that defiles a person, but what comes out of it. This statement challenges the Jewish dietary laws that focused on what was clean and unclean to eat. Explanation. Jesus redefines the concept of defilement, emphasizing the condition of the heart over ritual cleanliness. It's the words and actions that reflect a person's inner thoughts and attitudes that truly defile someone, not external factors. Verses 12 to 14. The disciples are concerned that Jesus has offended the Pharisees. Jesus responds by stating that every plant not planted by God will be uprooted and that they should leave the Pharisees alone because they are blind guides. Explanation. Jesus isn't concerned about offending the Pharisees, he's more concerned about the truth. He warns that those who lead others astray like the Pharisees will be judged, and it's best not to follow them. Verses 15 to 20, Peter asks Jesus to explain the parable about defilement. Jesus explains that it's not what enters the mouth that defiles, but what comes out of the heart, such as evil thoughts, murder, adultery, theft, false witness, and slander. Explanation. Jesus makes it clear that sin originates in the heart and is expressed through one's words and actions. He teaches that external purity rituals like washing hands before eating are not as important as inner purity, which is reflected in righteous thoughts and deeds. Verses 21 to 22, Jesus withdraws to the region of Tyre and Sidon, and a Canaanite woman approaches him, crying out for mercy for her demon-possessed daughter. Explanation. The woman is from a Gentile non-Jewish background, and her request shows her faith in Jesus as the Messiah. Despite being outside the covenant promises given to Israel, she seeks Jesus' help, demonstrating the inclusivity of his mission. Verses 23 to 24. Jesus initially does not respond, and the disciples urge him to send the woman away. Jesus replies that he was sent only to the lost sheep of Israel. Explanation. At first, Jesus seems to ignore the woman's plea. His response highlights the priority of his mission to the Israelites. However, this does not mean he will ignore the needs of others. He is testing her faith. Verses 25 to 27, the woman persists, kneeling before him, and asks again for help. Jesus tests her further, saying it's not right to take the children's bread, Israelites, and toss it to the dogs, Gentiles. The woman responds with faith, acknowledging even the dogs eat the crumbs from the children's table. Explanation. The woman's response is one of great humility and faith. She recognizes Jesus' mission to Israel but believes that even Gentiles can receive his mercy. Her persistence and humility are rewarded. Verse 28. Jesus praises her great faith and heals her daughter, saying her request is granted. Explanation. Jesus commends the woman for her faith, even though she is not an Israelite. This interaction demonstrates that faith in Jesus is not limited to the Jewish people but is open to all who believe, highlighting the universal nature of his message. Verses 29 to 31. Jesus moves on to the region of the Sea of Galilee, where large crowds gather. He heals many people, including the lame, blind, crippled, mute, and others, and the crowd is amazed. Explanation: this passage shows the compassion of Jesus as he heals people from all kinds of afflictions. It reinforces his authority and the fulfillment of Old Testament prophecies about the Messiah. Verses 30 to 234. Jesus expresses concern for the crowd that has been with him for 3 days without food. He miraculously feeds 4,000 men plus women and children with 7 loaves of bread and a few fish. Explanation: this miracle mirrors the earlier feeding of the 5,000 in Matthew 14. Jesus demonstrates his ability to provide for the needs of the people, showing his care for both their physical and spiritual well-being. The number 7 could signify completeness or perfection in a biblical sense. Verses 35 to 39. After the meal, the disciples collect 7 baskets of leftovers. Jesus sends the crowd away and gets into a boat to depart to the region of Magadan. Explanation: the leftover food further emphasizes the abundance of Jesus' provision. The crowd is fed, not just enough to get by, but with excess, symbolizing the overflowing grace of God. Jesus' actions continue to reveal his divine authority and compassion.